Good afternoon and welcome to the February 12th regularly scheduled meeting of the DeKalb County Board of Registration and Elections. Can I get the roll call, please?
Good afternoon, board members. When I call your name, please respond by saying here. Vasu Abhiraman, Travis Bowden,
Here.
Gail Lee,
Here.
Dele Loman,
Here.
Carly Swift.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Great. And can we get a motion to approve the January 8th, 2026 regularly scheduled meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Now we will have public comment.
Public comments may be made in person or by submitting an email of one printed page or less in a minimum of 12 fonts to electionspublicccmt@DeKalbCountyGA.gov, which must be received between 35 and 5 minutes before the scheduled start of the meeting. The body of your email must include your first and last name. By submitting an email for public comment, you agree to have your name and email broadcast on Ustream and entered into the record or minutes. The DeKalb Board of Registration and Elections reserves the right at the board's sole discretion to add your email to the record or minutes without reading any of it into the broadcast, or to read all or a portion of your email into the record or minutes. All public comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Abrasive, profane, derogatory language, holding up signs, clapping, yelling, standing, laying the aisles to show support or opposition to a speaker will not be prohibited, but a show of hands or quietly standing in place will be permitted to show support or opposition to a speaker's position.
Thank you. Is the timer going to count down? Okay, look at us. Moving into the 21st century. Okay, so I'll just call, I'm going to call you guys in groups. So the first 3, Michael Beach, Janet Grant, Betsy Shackelford.
Well, I'm waiting for this countdown. This is spiffy. 2 comments. One is this is Michael Beach from a poll manager here in Decatur, hearing from employees. We need a policy and guidance about if ICE shows up at our polls. I'm already being asked about it, and so we really do need something to be able to say and how we're supposed to respond. The other is I've been at the state houses, I know some of you have this week. Paper ballots are coming. I hope there's a plan, because it sure seems like people are resisting the fact that this is so late in February that we're still going to have this happen. And so are we prepared? I would like that guidance since training is starting. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Janet Grant. I'm a resident of DeKalb County, and I serve as an area poll manager. I'm here to both thank you and to encourage advocacy on an issue currently being considered in this legislative session. The positive election operational changes since I got involved as a poll manager in 2020 cannot be overemphasized. With the support of this board, the county commission, departmental leadership changes, and investment in staffing and equipment, our election system is unrecognizable from 2020. And I'm also happy to see that there's no resting on our laurels. Continuous improvement is a commitment that's being delivered for the voters in DeKalb County and should give all voters confidence in our elections. Just this year, a very sophisticated online poll worker training system is being rolled out, and it's excellent. I'm 40% done, and I've got 100% so far. And it's going to take training to a whole new level here in DeKalb. Thanks to the board for the support of the department as they pursue continuous improvement. However, this exciting new training system would have to be almost immediately scrapped if some of the changes being contemplated in the General Assembly pass. The legislature is grappling with the looming QR code removal deadline of July 1st, 2026 that was passed in House Bill 189. I'm sure you'll hear in your legislative update, the latest proposal would make an emergency move to hand-mark papered ballots this year on Election Day, with hand counting proposed for early voting sites. Even if these changes made sense, implementing them during a major election year is irresponsible. I'm aware that both Cobb and Fulton County election boards have passed resolutions asking the legislature to move that date back to 2027. This would give time for a rational vetting of the options, secure appropriations to fund the change, and time for counties to responsibly operationalize changes in an off-cycle year. So I strongly encourage this board to also weigh in and issue a similar resolution. Thank you.
I am very concerned about the 26 elections. Trump's unhinged attacks on elections, including at Fulton County, have left us fearing for democracy and the vote. Additionally, the Republicans in the legislature boxed them into a corner by doing nothing to implement Senate Bill 189 to forbid barcodes, and are now scrambling to scotch tape together an ill-thought-out fix. Again, like Fulton County, the BRE should resolve to delay implementation to 27. This is an obvious fix, but like most things, politics occur in almost every venture, and we know that there's a certain amount of leadership in the Georgia General Assembly that is utterly opposed to any kind of moving the date out, but it appears that that's the only sensible solution to this dilemma. Thank you.
All right, our next group, Cheryl Dudley, Kendra Bogowski, and then we will have the online comments afterwards, after that.
Good afternoon. Cheryl Dudley, DeKalb resident and voter activist. Good afternoon, board. Again, I thank you for, again, the work that you do to ensure that voters are secure and safe in this county, but I also implore you to ensure that you can protect all the voters and our safety and security of poll managers. Again, when the current form of ICE, which is really not what ICE was designed to do, can be kept out. I know they can't be kept out of DeKalb County. Again, people saw that with the DeKalb Commission. But as I mentioned in two of the meetings that I went to with my Dr. Bolton in the 7th Commission, please come up with plans and encourage the DeKalb Police Department, Captain DeLito knows my name now, to make plans to keep us all safe. ICE, it's been very evident, is being used by the current administration and the people that work with the current administration to intimidate voters. One lady in one of those meetings turned out to be a poll manager. She was like, what am I gonna do when ICE comes in? So again, please come up with that. Georgia, again, if you don't think this is the most important state in the whole United States for an election, it is the only state where a Democratic Senator Ossoff is running, and this administration will do everything it can to make sure that he does not win, and a whole lot of other people too. So again, I know you all do what you can do under the law. It's a pity that in some ways, that this state can't be a lot like other states and actually pass laws that prevent third parties from being able to take voters off of rolls. Also provide civil remedies and criminal remedies when voters are intimidated, and strengthen the certification laws. It's a pity that unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me speak.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the DeKalb Board of Voter Registrations and Elections. My name is Dr. Kendra Bogalski. I reside in unincorporated DeKalb, and I'm chair of the DeKalb County Republican Party. On January 12th, 2026, I emailed each of you a copy of Voter GA's December 30th, 2025 letter to county election supervisors detailing grave vulnerabilities in the Dominion Democracy Suite 5.5A voting system. Based on an emergency petition to the Elections Assistance Commission and a federal lawsuit filed by several Georgia organizations and voters. In summary, unrefuted expert testimony from 2024 cases shows the Dominion voting system Democracy Suite 5.5A never met EAC standards, with poor encryption key protection under outdated FIPS rules. These systems are interconnected worldwide by a shared X509 certificate, allowing results to be altered in minutes. This is akin to choosing to store your cryptocurrency on a platform with the password on the home page. In today's technological climate, it is unreasonable to assume that unauthorized users have not taken advantage of the system currently in use, especially considering one can purchase t-shirts with the Dominion passwords on it from Amazon.com. In fact, forensic analysis found 3,000 modified files, an uncertified compiler, internet access, and remote Dominion interventions in 2020 and 2021 elections. As we are all aware, our system also uses unverifiable QR codes, which will soon violate SB 189 after June 2026. Executive Order 14248 calls to revoke such certifications, and foreign components found in the systems also fail federal guidelines. Secretary Raffensperger wants us to ignore these facts, but perhaps Stacey Abrams wasn't wrong to question Georgia's results.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair and members of the board, 2 public comments have been received to be read into the record. Stephanie Sansom, DeKalb County resident. Dear board members, my husband and I have voted in DeKalb County for decades. We are always impressed with the friendliness and helpfulness of the poll workers. Thanks for making voting in DeKalb easy and pleasant. Please continue to support a large number of early voting sites across the county. We always vote early, and many of our friends do too. Please consider expanding the number of days and hours for early voting, commensurate with your resources. I think we all become aware of reports that the federal government will attempt to make voting more challenging this year. Please do your best to coordinate with state and local officials so that all eligible persons continue to be able to exercise their constitutional right to vote. Thank you. Second and final online comment from Carla Boudreaux, DeKalb County resident. I appreciate the large number and geographic spread of early voting locations and hope changes to polling locations at some schools due to construction will be appropriately communicated to affected voters in a timely manner. I am concerned about bills currently under draft and or consideration in the Georgia Assembly that attempt to comply with SB 189 from the previous legislative session. No action was taken last year, and now there is a scramble to come up with poorly thought out measures that would cost time and money to counties just don't have. I asked DeKalb BRE to consider a measure similar to that proposed by Cobb County, which moves the deadline for compliance with SB 189 from July 1st, 2026 to July 1st, 2027. This would increase confidence in the elections process by implementing a new process in a straightforward and transparent process with time for adequate testing and manageable costs.
Thank you, everyone who provided comments today. We're going to move into the next part of our meeting, which are the items for discussion, and we'll start with the director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your packets, beginning on page 5, you will find the template for the director's report and the numbers for registration. So with that, I'll just review the registration updates as of February 10th, which is when this report was published. There were 564,506 registered voters, what's on this screen is effective as of today, and I'll read those too, but we always have the two sets to compare. A total of 488,508 were active as of the 10th, and 75,998 inactive. Total applications as of February 10th was 6,531. Of those 6,531 applications left, 5,615 were driver services or DDS, 10 for the online voter registration or Oliver, 12 my voter page MVP, and 733 handwritten. Manual voter registration cancellations for 2025 totaled 4,089. And monthly, from December to January, the totals were, and these are the numbers from February 10th, 796. What you're seeing on the slide are updates as of today. And so as of today, we had 565,014 total registered voters in DeKalb County, of which 489,102 were active, 75,912 inactive. We will also just review the numbers of 4,157 applications were reported today as being left to process, of which 3,788 were DDSs, 21 were Oliver, 29 from my voter page, 319 handwritten applications, and manual registrations as for the month of January to today, February, was 577. So subtract on the report 796 or 577 from 796, and you'll see the number processed in December. Okay. And so I also just want to mention the returned mail processing. We had 5,776 precinct cards returned, processed. Confirmation notices as of today, 2,794. Returned confirmation notices were 11, and then letters totaled 971. Want to mention that we did receive last week notification from the Secretary of State that because of a data comparison conducted between county voter registration records and the Social Security Administration database, there were certain records that were potentially deceased, identified as being potentially or deceased. And so from that exercise performed by registration staff members, 3,140 voter registrations were canceled in that activity. We are, of course, gearing up for the special election, but I do want to mention that I was trying to see what was on the screen. We have so many fancy things going on for you guys so that you can see our updates. And this is our, first launch of the PowerPoint slides in this manner. So you don't just see the, paper in Word format. So I just want to make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing on my report, okay? And so we did have a pension election. For those that are on our county emails, you notice that our department facilitates the county pension board election. And so on Monday, we did facilitate that election and were able to create the project. We tested the equipment and prepared the supplies for the election. And I think we staffed 5 sites around the county so that eligible voters in the employee and retiree delegation could vote for that seat. And so that was facilitated without a hitch, and the results were forwarded to the pension board. And so I'm very pleased and thank my staff for taking on that task. We are also gearing up now for House District 94's special election. As we mentioned in the last meeting, the election will be held in March, and so we found since the last meeting that it will be held on March 10th. And so we will begin early voting for that March 10th election on Monday, February 16th, and early voting will run through March 6th. As we mentioned at the last meeting, we have 3 early voting locations, and on election day, there will be 6 election day polling locations. And so please, we want you to check your voter registration information to determine if you're eligible to vote in this election. And if so, make a plan to vote, whether it's early via absentee, by mail, or in person. So please check your voter registration for that. There is a copy of the sample ballot for this election on the screen and in your packets as well. And so that's what you have there. I will move on to the qualifying for the general primary election. Qualifying for local candidates will take place in our office Monday, March 2nd till noon on Friday, March 6th. And so we will be qualifying the local candidates, judge of the state court, county commissioners, county board of education, and the soil and water conservation supervisor. So we're looking forward to also a candidate workshop that will facilitate for those who may be interested in running for an office in DeKalb County, and that flyer is displayed right now, and we've also submitted that in other forms of communication for our residents to consider. So please register for this via the QR code that is included online, and we'd be glad for you to join us for this informative workshop. Our warehouse began testing, and I'm jumping back to our March 10th special election. LNA testing began on Monday and concluded, and so we are ready to deliver the equipment for our early voting locations, and so I'm excited to report that as well. I want to look at the budget document that starts on page 6 in your packets. What you have here is the requested budget for fiscal year 2026. You will see that we requested $14,987,034, a little less than $15 million, just shy of $15 million. Recommended by the Finance Department was a little less, which is $14,842,034. They reduced the capital outlays. If you look there, you'll see that we requested $150,000. It was reduced by $145,000. And so when you look at the actuals from 2023 and 2024, you'll see that, there was a jump in 2024 because that was the presidential election year. We actually had 3 elections because we had the March presidential preference primary, which was a statewide election, which, we opened all precincts. We had an ample amount of early voting locations as well. And we then had the primary as well as the general. In 2025, we had 2, elections. And so this year, we have a special election, right? But we are only opening a limited amount of locations. And so the budget will accommodate the special election. We are still waiting to hear back regarding the reconciled amount that we actually spent last year. But if you recall from last month's budget packet, we were hanging right around $8 million. So as I mentioned, we've done a really good job of managing the costs to facilitate elections efficiently in DeKalb County. In the past, we've asked for $4 million more than we've actually spent because we didn't know what that year was going to look like. I think we have a handle on our elections in terms of the cost associated with facilitating them, and I'm comfortable with the $14 million request. However, I am presenting it today because if the board believes that we need to request an additional amount for an activity, now is the time to get that request in, because the Board of Commissioners will be voting to adopt the budget within the next week or so. And so I'm happy to answer questions around the budget. But I just also want to mention that the activities that are going on in our communications department are robust. They are executing their efforts with high impact and precision through multi-channel avenues. They are taking that approach. We are leveraging, ads, spaces. We are waiting for the delivery of our mobile unit, and we're committed to refining the approach and maximizing outreach as we move forward in communicating our voters around how, when, and where to vote. And we look to the possibility of legislative changes that will have a public-facing impact and will incorporate that messaging as well. And so I say that because I do want the board to consider the budget that we've requested and have a discussion around that today. And with that, that concludes my updates.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a substantive update. I will start with Ms. Lee and we can go around.
Are we focused on the budget or the entire thing?
The entire report.
The entire report. Okay. Well, let's start with the budget. I am concerned about the capital outlays. DeKalb County recently purchased this building, and I was thinking that maybe there are needs that you have that need to be taken care of, and structural changes or something. And I was just wondering about $5,000.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the capital outlays that we include in that are more related to our equipment and elections software, like computer software. And so we will go back to them for that. But in terms of the building and the cost to renovate and what have you, that will not be a part of our budget. That's a part of the general funds, and the administration would be responsible for making the extensive updates. I have not heard a timeline as to when renovations will begin, and I don't think that they'll begin this year during a major election, because they understand that we will be very busy and will need every inch of the space that we're occupying right now. Yes. So we didn't plan, like I said, to renovate anything this year. But that capital budget would belong to another area, and it may be facilities, but it's not us.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. And the retirement services has taken a jump, and I was wondering why.
Yep. And so that line item, of course, is determined by finance, and it's based on the number of staff and the fringe around the full-time equivalent, the full-time employees. It jumped because we hired more people last year, and so the projections are reflective of the number of staff we now have. So I mentioned how we were able to save money in temporary services because we've almost doubled the number of FTEs that we had when I came on board. So each year, we've added additional staff. And so we're at 31, I believe, full-time. And last year, I think, hired at least 4, and 2 of those were management level positions. And so the retirement services is based on salaries and the number of staff that we have.
Thank you. See, that was my other questions. Oh, yeah. When you finalize the 2025 budget, I'd appreciate getting a copy of that.
Oh, yes, I mentioned in the last meeting that that will probably happen in March, and I will share that with the board then.
Okay. Then on the statistics that you give us at the beginning, I appreciate the fact that you've put the monthly removals in there. However, it doesn't give us the oversight tool that we really need, as the legislature has set up a process, several processes, to feed back into the voter rolls. And we don't have any way to know if they're really happening. We had a felon who was applying for a position on, to be on the ballot, and it may have been an aberration, or there may have been a failure in the system. And so if we had the categories broken down of the different processes that are supposed to be coming in reports every month through the Secretary of State's office, we could see if there is a breakdown. When someone leaves a job that has responsibility to provide a report, they may not tell the next person that they need to do this responsibility, and so the system can break down and we never know it. I think it would be very useful to have a listing by month of the previous month's people that self-reported, then the deceased, and, in 2024, was it? Yeah, 2024, I had a list of deceased that I submitted, and some of them had been deceased for a number of years, and then some of them were more recent deceased, but several months old. So the Secretary of State is supposed to be giving us a list of those every month, and they should be removed every month. So it'd be nice to see if the processes are working. And then there's the courts are supposed to be giving us every month a list of any mental incompetence. They probably won't be very many of those, but still we need to know if that system's working. If someone shows up for jury duty and says, oh, I can't be on the jury because I'm not a citizen, the courts are supposed to report that too, and that's a monthly report. And then there's duplications. Be nice to know how many of those are being removed. And then the Secretary of State, of course, does his list maintenance, and that's going to be a big number. So I thought it would be very nice if we could have a listing of those broken down by category for the previous month, and then the year-to-date beside it, so we could see over time how it's working and if it's working. And I would ask if my fellow board members are interested in participating in that oversight.
I'm not. I think the reports as given are appropriate, but happy to provide others with the opportunity to speak. Mr. Bowden?
So taking a look at the budget, and it's a pretty straightforward, well-presented budget. No issues there. One question, I'm taking a look at the, if you'll look at page 7, voter registration and elections, the communications item. And I understand that, obviously you're going to spend more in an election year versus a non-election year, and I think that's, reflected there. One question, the requested FY '26 is roughly $60,000 higher than the recommended FY '26, and I'm just curious, what should the requested amount be granted? What would that extra $60,000 go to?
So remember I mentioned that the reduction was in the capital outlays. So we have three cost centers. So our communications division, which consists of training, public affairs, and community outreach, is 2922. Our operations, which is elections, registration, and the warehouse, is the 2920, and 2910 is administration. So that $145,000 is the sum total of all of the three cost centers request. And so 60,000 of that was for computers and software for that division.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so I just was curious about it because I just, I was curious if it was more of a, prorated expenditure, which it sounds like it is, rather than, an engagement of a vendor or
Right.
something like that. So
Yep.
that's what I was curious about.
That's
Okay, that
what
was
it
my
was.
question. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm.
Ms. Lee, were you finished with your comments?
Yes,
Okay.
until we get to the centers.
Okay, great. Mr. Bowden, that was it? Okay. We'll go to Ms. Loman Smith.
Thank you. The only question that I had was on the capital outlay, which you answered. And I just wanted to state, since we were going around on this, that I am good with the level of detail of the registration report that we get. And I would not want to increase the amount of labor and resources that the department has to invest on top of that. So I'm fine with what we get. I think it's very detailed and thorough. But that's it for me. Thank you.
Mr. Abraman?
100% agree with what Ms. Lohman just said right now. I believe we get enough detail here and appreciate the work that goes into it. Also appreciate how much better the budgeting process has gotten in this department year after year, especially during your tenure. So hats off to you and the rest of the staff.
Thank you. I do have a question related to the budget. As has been raised already, there is legislation that effectively is going to require a change in QR codes. So I want to know, are there any budget contingencies planned for in this budget? And I'm assuming so that's the, so first, are there budget contingencies in this existing budget? In the event. Mm-hmm.
So with, as it relates to some of the newer legislation that is being considered now, we are evaluating, the impacts, and we have some preliminary numbers that, were not included in our budget request. There, if some, particularly one in particular bill, if that is passed in this session, it will be a burden financially, and so we have not included that, and I don't know that we know enough yet to include, to project accurately because we just don't know what, to expect.
And I don't want to put you on the spot because you've already, that was a good explanation, but I would be interested in knowing generally, are we talking about 6 figures? Are we talking about 7 figures?
Yeah, one estimate we had was between $5 and $7 million.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
helpful. Okay, so that's not included in this current budget. Obviously, in the event that some of this legislation were to pass, there is the potential that it could cost us 7 figures, 5 to 7 million. So that's helpful, I think, for us to know. And I had a question about the budget outlay as well. I did have one more question on outreach. That, okay, so the outreach budget for 2024, when we had another statewide federal election, was 2.6 million. Is there a reason why it isn't, the requested budget for 26 is not aligned in the 2 millions? Rather, is there a reason for a decrease from 24? Because this is also a statewide election year. Yes. Okay.
I believe that that included expenses for electronics, like, the 2024 budget for the comms. I know that we looked at that budget, and I believe, I said electronics, I didn't mean electronics. I believe that some of that was paid to vendors instead of coming out of professional services, but I need to double check that. I worked with the deputy directors. They did do with a fine tooth comb comparisons, line item by line item, and felt that what was offered to me was adequate. Right off the bat, I can't remember what the $2 million was spent on in 2024. I can't. I know that some of that was other professional services. So that's not just outreach. It wasn't just, that's a part of the temps, that's training, that was I believe that there was some equipment cost in there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said that you are okay with the recommended budget, that the 100 or so thousand is that something that, I guess, do we need to advocate to get the budget up to the requested amount?
So and now it's all coming back. Had a moment. So what we did in 2024 was we included other professional services in the communications instead of including it under administration or the admin, the 2910. And so you'll see a shift there where in 2024, we budgeted $8 million. We're now budgeting $11 million. So the contracts and for other professional services, such as the communications vendor, and other professional services will come out of the $11 million.
Okay. But do you want any additional advocacy on getting this closer to the requested amount, or we believe the recommended amount is sufficient?
Well, I think that we can definitely get the $145,000 added back. And I will just make that, phone call. That's not a problem.
Okay.
And I had planned to do that.
Okay.
So
Are there
you're
any
essentially saying advocacy is needed, but you got it.
Got it.
Yes, happy to have it if you want. Yes,
I think
as well.
I think you've done a good job of accurately and adequately budgeting for the needs of the county. And so I would hate to have need to go back at some point for additional funds that we could just have budgeted.
I can do that.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No? Okay. All right, let's move on to the legislative update.
Okay, good evening, board members. As you will recall, this has become a practice of ours when the General Assembly is in session to provide you with a brief summary of the different bills that the General Assembly is considering that are related to election matters. You probably know that the legislative session started in early January, so we're just getting going. It will go through April 2nd is the last day of the session. So right now, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been a whole lot of activity yet on election-related bills. Let me back up a little bit. You also probably know that this is the second year of a 2-year legislative session, so that bills that were introduced last year are still alive and can be considered throughout this year. If they're not passed this year, they will fall off and have to be reintroduced again. So that's where we're at right now. There's a whole bunch of election bills that I can go through with you this morning that have that are pending right now. There's not been any action on them yet, but as the session goes on, obviously I would expect to have a lot more action on them. And you're aware that I can read you some summaries of them right now, that they are very likely to change and be amended as the session progresses. So with that, let me just sort of go through what we have pending now. I've not done a deep dive on any of these yet because there's not been a lot of actions on them. Like I said, as the session goes on, I will try to watch these and report back to you monthly about what's going on with them. So the first bill that I have is House Bill 215, and that's the Voter List Integrity Act. That is pending in the House Government Affairs Committee, and that legislation prohibits the Secretary of State, election superintendent, or any other state entity from joining or participating in any multi-state voter list maintenance organization that contacts unregistered individuals with the intent to register them or share voter data, except for the purpose of removing deceased, duplicate, and otherwise ineligible voters. I think that's the one involving Eric. House Bill 502, that's the bill involving preferential treatment of voters accompanied by children. So on election day, if you have a child that's under the age of 2, you can go directly to one of the voting stations. That is also pending in the House Government Affairs Committee. House Bill 604, that involves a manual ballot recount. It is pending in the House Government Affairs Committee, and that bill allows for manually recounting all ballots cast within a county or city. I haven't heard a lot about that one. We may hear more about that one. House Bill 633, this expands the people who are allowed to request absentee ballots. You realize right now I think it's family members, and there's a list of people. This would add caregivers to that list of people who can request absentee ballots. That's pending before the House Government Affairs Committee. House Bill 1108, that involves hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballot requirements, pending before House Government Affairs. And it moves the duty for supplying election equipment from the Secretary of State to the State Election Board. It requires that equipment be procured from an American company and incapable from being accessed remotely. It requires the use of hand-marked paper ballots and tabulation in a publicly recorded hand count, and it removes the role of rulemaking concerning elections from the Secretary of State and gives it to the State Election Board. House Resolution 251, this involves nonpartisan elections for probate judges. It proposes a constitutional amendment that would appear on the ballot to allow nonpartisan election of probate judges. We have a couple similar. House Bill 14 would allow local communities to choose to have nonpartisan elections of district attorneys and solicitor generals. Senate Bill 15 would do the same for governing authorities for Board of Commissioners, so that would allow non-partisan elections. Both of those are pending in the Senate Ethics Committee. Senate Bill 214 passed the Senate last year, and it is pending now in the House Government Affairs Committee. It requires that if a registered voter shows up at their designated polling place on election day or during early voting at an approved location and possesses proper ID, they have a right to vote using a special absentee ballot. The ballot shall be placed by the voter in a secure sealed box. And the superintendent has to provide all these sufficient ballots. There's a number of things with this one. I believe that there may be various amendments out there on this one. This one actually is one that was briefly scheduled for a hearing and then was canceled. So I would watch this one and as the session goes on. Senate Bill 274, which would allow for same-day registration and voting. That is pending in the Senate Ethics Committee. And finally, Senate Bill 422 would essentially move municipal elections to even-numbered years unless there was a local law that required it in specific jurisdictions. So those are what are pending now. If you have any questions, but as I said, I will try to monitor these and give you updates as the session goes on.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, let's move into items for decision.
Okay. So as with most years, during the summer, we have some polling place changes due to school construction or other limited availability issues. So 8 schools will be unavailable over the summer. And we have a plan in place to move those sites temporarily. And what you have beginning on slide 12 are the changes that staff proposes for the summer. Okay, so Cross Keys High and Woodward. There you see that the current polling place is Cross Keys High, and the proposed polling place is Woodward Elementary School. And the change in distance is a reduction of about 0.04 miles. And the number of voters, all of those would be the same, so they all would move. On page 13, you'll see the Ashford Park Alum location. Again, Ashford Park Elementary School will be temporarily closed, and the proposed polling place relocation is to John Lewis Elementary School. And there's a change in an additional 0.14 miles, and 6,685 voters will be moved to. And there's another precinct in that location, and that is Dresden. On slide 14, Champion Theme Middle, so Stone Mountain combined, and that's construction is at Champion Theme Middle School, and temporary move will be to currently combined Stone Mountain Elm, Stone Mountain Champion, and Stone Mountain precincts to St. Michael's and All Angels Episcopal Church. The distance change is 0.59 miles, and that number of voters impacted is 5,559. Slide 15 Again, due to the building construction at Winbrook Elm, we would temporarily move the Winbrook Elm precinct to Stevenson High. And that's, again, all of these were for May and the potential June runoff. The distance change here is 0.67 miles, and the number of impacted voters is 7,028. Slide 16 shows Idlewood Elm, which would we would temporarily move Idlewood Elementary School precinct to Stone Mountain Middle School. The distance change is 0.32 miles. Affected voters, 4,838. Cantler Murphy, Cantler Elm is on slide 17. The proposal is to move those voters to Arabia Mountain High School, which is a distance change of 0.13 miles, and the impacted voter total is 3,635. And almost second to last. Sagamore Hills Elm on slide 18. Temporary move would be to Outlet Community Church. It's a distance change of 0.58 miles, and the total voters impacted is 5,826. And last is on slide 19, and that's Kingsley Elementary. And the proposed is to move the Kingsley Elm precinct to Kingswood United Methodist Church. And there are two other precincts at that proposed location. The distance change for the Kingsley Elm precinct is 0.56 miles, and the total voters that will be at that location after the move is 5,977. Those are the changes.
Okay, thank you very much for that comprehensive explanation. We can start with Ms. Lee. Are there any questions?
Can I assume you will be giving notice to everybody?
Yes. We will send letters as well as precinct cards, I believe, to the voters well in advance of the election. So as soon as the board votes and approves these sites, we will begin to prepare communications. Signage will be placed at each of the locations to let them know where the new location is as well. And then we will also be able to use other communication methods to reach these individual voters that will be impacted.
Okay. And then there's a few that have more than one precinct there. Is there any chance of overload or?
No, that was a consideration when they proposed the locations. So we made sure that we were under the maximum amount per precinct. And we will staff accordingly.
Thank you.
Mr. Bowden?
No questions. I think this covers it.
Okay. Ms. Loman, do you have any questions?
No questions,
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Abraman?
I'm just curious. I'm an advocate for ending runoffs in Georgia, or at least decreasing the chances of them happening. I'm wondering how many of these changes were necessitated by the June 16th runoff that would not have had to happen if we just had the May 19th date.
All of them.
Oh, wow. All of them. That's a good data point. Yeah. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. You answered the communication, so we'll have large signs at the old location and the new location. Yes. And This is gonna harken back to one of our former board members. I do want to ask you about parking access and ability for handicapped individuals, specifically at some of the elementary schools. Is the voting gonna be close to an entrance? Can you talk through did you guys look at those things with these locations?
Yes, the staff assess the sites. They're making sure that we're communicating with the administration so they understand the number of ADA spaces we are required to have, and they are amenable to, work with us, and they have reconfirmed their commitment to do so.
And also, just to confirm and for the public's knowledge, we're limited in the types of locations and places that we can go. So I assume that the places identified were the only options geographically in the area.
Yes, and that provision is more so for early voting, I believe that you're referring to, but even still, it's really hard to find a facility that will accommodate voting on election day. DeKalb County doesn't have a plethora of options that are ADA compliant, that have ample parking, that meet the requirements for the electrical capacity that we need to operate the machines. So we do our best, and right now the schools are our best options for election day.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no questions, can we get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve temporary polling place changes for the May primary and June runoff.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, let's move to the early voting sites for the May 19th general primary.
Thank you.
It's page 20.
In your packets,
packet.
you will have the proposed locations, dates, and times for the May primary election. And staff is recommending 20 early voting locations for May. And you will notice, I think, a few new locations that would be added to our complement of sites, and but the distribution, which is on 21, page 21, shows again how we evenly distribute. It's a nice cover for all areas of the county, and so we're asking your approval to proceed with the 20 sites that are listed here, and the proposed dates, which we are proposing April 27th to May 15th, which is the full period allowed for early voting, and sticking with our 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. weekdays, 2 Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Sundays noon to 5 p.m.
Okay, I'm going to start to my left with Mr. Abaraman.
No questions from me.
Okay, Ms. Loman? No questions?
No questions.
Right, Ms. Lee?
Of course, I have questions.
Mm-hmm.
The new Bethel sits out there all by itself, 6.5 miles from the nearest one. Is there any thought of putting something else in the area, or is there no turnout?
There weren't any other options. So I believe, have we ever had anything in that area? No, we haven't found anything that would. Now, this is early voting, and Chair Swift mentioned there are limitations. And so for early voting, the site has to be either an election day site as well as an early voting, to be an early voting site, or it could be owned or leased by a government. So that limits the type of locations that we could have.
You have churches there, right?
Churches that are election day sites,
I see.
yes.
I see. Okay. And there is a cluster on the other side of the neighborhood church, the Bessie Barnum and Greater Piney. They're like 2 miles apart, and the whole group is just 3 miles long. I'm just wondering why the heavy cluster.
Yep. So the board in the past requested those Bessie and Neighborhood Church are in the city of Atlanta. And so when you look at the turnout that we've had over the last few years, Bessie Brenham is one of our top 4, 5 in terms of turnout. And so having a second site close to Bessie is, I think, it's a great idea, and we offer it. And when we don't, someone on the board typically asks why it's not on the proposal. So
Okay.
at least one person, maybe 2, often. And so, but it is a popular site, the neighborhood church. But I will mention that they did not have the sanctuary available this May. So voting will take place on the 3rd floor, but there is an elevator that goes to the 3rd floor. And so we've voted in that location before, but it is the smaller location, the smaller room.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask a question about the area that Ms. Lee highlighted. Isn't that also an industrial area? That's why there
Yes.
usually isn't. That's the other issue. It's very industrial, so they can't find.
That's a good point.
And I know I've been supportive of as many locations as we can have, and so I appreciate that we have 20 for people in the city of Atlanta portion of the county. You know, it's a small but mighty crew, and they would also like to be able to vote. So I think that's how we ended up with those cluster. But okay, that being said, unless there are any other questions, are there any questions about the times? Are we good with times? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I be recognized?
Yes.
I just wanted to add as well that within that part of the city of Atlanta, a lot of it is more walkable than many parts of DeKalb County. And so while the distance of, a couple miles is not great when you're driving, it definitely is when you're walking. And so that's another consideration for those locations.
Thank you. Okay. All right, with that being said, can we get a motion to approve the proposed early voting locations, times for the May 19th general primary election?
I would like to propose that we approve the early voting locations and times.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Okay, we have the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission election.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
It's in your packets, beginning on page 22, I believe. You'll find the memorandum of agreement between the Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission and the election superintendent of the county. We're asking for the board's approval to give me authorization to enter into an agreement with the commission in a form that is approved by the county attorney.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay. No questions? Seeing none, can we get a motion to make that authorization for the director?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
all right,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, great. Is there a need for executive session?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will have board comments. I'm going to start with Ms. Lohman because I do know that she has to leave. So do you have any comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to, per usual, thank the director and the team for keeping us up to date and for doing a great job of managing our elections and all the work that leads up to it. I also wanted to just emphasize to our visitors and anybody who happens to be watching the meeting the importance of making sure that we speak accurately and thoughtfully about the times that we're in. I hear a lot of people talking about the administration canceling elections, and it scares people and creates a narrative that may encourage people to not show up and participate. At present, the federal government does not have the authority to simply outright cancel elections. And anyone who attempts that is going to be met with a great deal of resistance from this county, and I'm sure plenty of others who are very dedicated to protecting our citizens' right to vote. So I just would encourage all of us to remind folks that elections are run at the state and county level, and that we will be continuing to protect their right to vote and make sure that they can participate as much as we can. So thank you for that, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off.
Thank you. I will start to my left.
Thank you to the director, our legal team, and all our hardworking staff. No, it's not easy having a special election coming up, so thank you for all the work that you're putting into that. Hope everything goes well. Yeah, we're in a tough situation in Georgia. I just wanted to recognize it, echo some of the sentiments that Board Member Lohman just mentioned. Shocking, even, the ridiculousness that this state is having to deal with right now. Definitely wanted to recognize how difficult things have been on the Fulton Board of Elections, on their department, on their commission, on their legal team. There are a lot of outstanding questions about why this was even authorized and what happens now. And then the legislation that's being proposed, I'm hoping the most onerous provision is dead. I wanted to shout out a lot of people in this room for showing up to the Capitol that Monday right before that hearing got canceled. I know there's a couple of us board members who were also there. That was going to be one long public comment period, so maybe that's what the chair thought as well over there. I have a strong opinion on this QR code thing, and I want to be really precise in my speaking here. I don't believe there's any material difference between having a QR code used on these current ballots and not. There is much more of a difference between hand-marked paper ballots in our current system, but just the removal of QR codes, it just kind of offends me when actual policy is made off of a lack of technical rigor and an understanding of the process. And I think that provision in particular screams a lack of real technical understanding. I'm happy to talk about this offline with folks, with any of you here. I think it's not very logical. So I do hope. I know a couple of other boards have passed some resolutions, as one of the public commenters mentioned, to ask for the legislature to push the date, the effective date of the QR code provision a year. That is exactly what should happen at the very least, And if that doesn't happen, I think the legislature should go with the most narrowly tailored solution here, whether that's optical character recognition at the county level or something else. But I am offended as a Georgia Tech graduate at just the lack of technical rigor, I think, that underlies that specific provision. And I just hope that the legislature, the federal government, everybody just gets off our backs. All right.
Mr. Bowden?
Tough act to follow. Obviously, this is a historic election this year. We're all aware of it. I won't belabor the points that were made by some of the other individuals here, but the fight for secure elections, election integrity and election security are crucial. And, a lot of that comes from engagement. A lot of that comes from seeing what's going on with our elections. A lot of that comes from people that are engaged like yourselves. So thank you very much for attending. No matter your stance, we appreciate you coming and showing up today in person. If anybody's watching at home, this is a nearly packed room, so that's very impressive. I've been going to a lot of government meetings all my career, and I very rarely see a room this full. But thank you all for attending, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
Ms. Lee?
Well, I would like to thank the staff and the director for finding all these polling places and moving people around. It's quite an undertaking. And also, I want to thank the people that brought up the concern about ICE at the polls. I think that is a valid concern of a lot of people. And so I hope we will be addressing that. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. I actually don't want to belabor this. I appreciate I'm going to echo everything that everyone has said. Thank you to the public for being here. I also want to thank our staff, our legal team, as always, for providing excellent support. And just to remind everybody that I am old enough to remember when elections when running the elections were really not a partisan effort, and I really just hope we can get back to that, because it's unfortunate that we have to deal with policy being made by fiat, and hopefully as we learn more about how much it'll cost to implement some of these policy decisions made at the legislature, folks will understand that we need to be a little more thoughtful about how we think about elections, how we operationalize them. So with that, I'm going to get off my soapbox and ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks.
We
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.